You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Athan Hristodulu.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Athan Hristodulu. It's Saturday, January 15th, 2022. It is game day of the NFL's Super Wildcard Weekend playoffs. We got 2 games slated for today, 3 for tomorrow, and then we got the very first ever Monday night game as well. But today we are talking about Sunday's game, the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers in Kansas City. So make sure you hit that like button down below, hit that sub button so you don't miss the remaining previews, and check out the other ones as well. I've already done pretty much everything except for the Rams and Cardinals at this point as I'm doing this one now. So make sure you check those out. And now let's talk some Steelers and some Chiefs. All right, so this is another one. And I feel like this has been happening a lot throughout this wild card weekend here. We're getting a lot of in-season rematches here, and this is another one that was not very close. Really, at any point in the game, it took the Steelers up until nearly the end of the third quarter to get any points on the board. And I'm thinking that this game might end up being a little bit closer than that first one. More so because I don't think the Steelers, just that type of team that they are, would not let something like that happen to them again twice, or at least I would hope not. Also, this is potential for Ben Roethlisberger's last game. I think the team, with that in mind, has maybe a little more oomph to them going into this one. So let's talk about some X factors in this game and just kind of the important big impact players that I think we'll be keeping an eye on as we go through and who I think will probably have the biggest effect on the game. The first 2 that come to mind, we'll talk Steelers first, has got to be TJ Watt and Cameron Hayward, 2 guys that have been able to get after the quarterback, disrupt the quarterback, and really just kind of wreak havoc. TJ Watt obviously tying the regular season record with 22.5 sacks. In my opinion on that is he tied the record. I've seen a lot of people saying that it doesn't count because of 17 games and whatnot. I think that is a real silly argument because at one point the NFL was playing only 14-game seasons, and even prior to that, I think it was only, like 11 or 12 games before that. So you can't really sit there and say records don't count and then say that, the records of today's era count because at one point the NFL was only 14 games and, Peyton Manning's passing records for an entire season was done in a 16-game season. So it's like, you can't sit there and argue it. Records are records. The game changes as we move on. It is what it is. He tied the record. It's in the books. That's all that matters. There's never going to be an asterisk or anything like that. But TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward, awesome on the defensive line. On the offensive side of the football, Najee Harris, the rookie running back, first-round pick. The guy has been awesome. He has been the exact bell cow back that they were looking for going into this season to help ease some pressure off of Ben Roethlisberger. And while there has been some instances, in my opinion, where the Steelers forgot that that's the reason they brought him in there and still had Ben Roethlisberger throwing absurd amounts of passes anyways, despite all that, he's still been an excellent piece to the offense. I think that, he should probably be getting the ball a little bit more. And I would like to see that happen for him next year. I think he is a premier bell cow back, an Alabama guy. We all know how well they produce running backs. The guy has been awesome for the team. The biggest X factor, though, going into this game, in my opinion, is very low-key, super important to this game here, is going to be wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster making a comeback from injury. He's missed literally like the entire season. I don't remember exactly when he got hurt, but I'm pretty sure, I think it was preseason, and if not, it was very early on, like weeks 1 or 2. I don't remember exactly when the injury was, but the guy has been missing for quite some time in Pittsburgh, and I think that they've really missed him at that wide receiver spot. Do I think he's going to have a massive game and maybe blow the roof off of the Chiefs? No. But his presence on the field should open things up for the offense to be able to run a little bit more effectively. The Chiefs might stack the box a little bit less because of the fact that they have to respect Juju Smith-Schuster being out there as well. While I'm not saying that Smith-Schuster is the same wide receiver he was a couple of years ago, he is still a threat to make some plays and, a different wrinkle to this team as opposed to the first time they met. I think he will play a key factor in opening some things up, and I really hope that with that in mind, the Steelers do end up focusing more on Najee Harris in this matchup with that. Now, for the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, it's a given, very obvious. Travis Kelce, another one, very obvious. Chris Jones on the defensive side of the football, obvious. Tyrann Mathieu, another one. I mean, there's so many players on this team that I think you could really say are going to, make some sort of big appearance or a big splash play here and there. There is a lot to like about this Chiefs team. But I think that the biggest and most important player to this game, and one that's, I think, going to not maybe shape the game, but decide how well this offense moves, because when he hasn't been playing well, it's honestly surmounted into them being, or surmounted is not even a word, as amounted into them losing their 5 losses that they had this year, has got to be wide receiver Tyreek Hill. Let's just look at some numbers here, because I was trying to identify the biggest things that were going on in the games the Chiefs lost this year, and this is what really stood out to me. Obviously, the interceptions and whatnot that was going on, a little bit ridiculous early in the year. A lot of tipped interceptions. People give Patrick Mahomes crap for all the interceptions and whatnot that were going on earlier in the year. A lot of those were not his fault. I'm not sitting here praising Patrick Mahomes and saying, they don't count. They do count regardless, but there was a lot of really bad interceptions that were not his fault. So we'll just kind of clear that out of the way. However, when Tyreek Hill was not producing, it ended up being in the same very 5 games that they lost. In the Chiefs' 5 losses, we'll look at the numbers here for Tyreek. 0 touchdowns, 44.4 yards a game for his average, and he was averaging only 8 yards a reception. To put that into perspective, his season average, so you look at the entire season as a whole, he had 9 touchdowns on the year, so averaging about like half a touchdown a game, a little bit more than that. And then from there, 72.9 yards a game. That's up almost 30 yards from the number I just read off to you guys about those 5 losses. And then average of 11.2 yards a reception, more than 3.2 yards to be exact, more than what Hill had in those losses. It's very clear that when Hill is being minimized and being taken out of the game and not able to produce the numbers that we are used to seeing Tyreek Hill do during the year, it really affects this Chiefs offense, how efficient they are, how quickly they can move down the field. I mean, we've all seen the massive plays that Patrick Mahomes has had throwing to Tyreek Hill over the last few years. It's very obvious to me that Hill and him having a great game is a massive key factor for the Chiefs' success in them being able to dominate offensively the way they have, and I think it's going to be no different going into this one here. Hill needs to have a good game for this Chiefs offense to be successful. Now, for some things to watch that I have picked out for this game when I was looking at numbers and just kind of going back and watching some of the, so just quick highlights and things like that from both of these teams. The first one that I obviously noted right away is going to be the Steelers' pass rush taking on this Kansas City Chiefs pass protection. I think that's probably the most interesting and most significant matchup of the game. The first time these two teams met, KC only allowed a couple of sacks, so did a fairly good job against the number 1 ranked team in sacks in the NFL in the Pittsburgh Steelers. They had 55 sacks on the year total, and they were also 7th in pressures at 171. So you look at that, the Steelers, an amazing team when it comes to getting after the quarterback. They do an excellent job there. KC, one of the best teams in pass protection. They're 3rd in the league in sacks allowed, sitting at only 28. These two obviously already went against each other once, and the Chiefs did a very good job limiting them. I think that in order for the Chiefs to be successful again, the formula that they used the first time, it should be pretty similar this time around in terms of pass protection schemes and how they protect Patrick Mahomes going into this one here. But like I said, I expect the Steelers to have a little more oomph in them. It seems like they're playing at a little bit of a higher level, knowing that Ben Roethlisberger is going to be done at the end of this season. All signs are pointing in that direction at this point. They were able to hold TJ Watt to 0 sacks the last time these two teams played as well. So if TJ Watt can get in the mix a little bit more, obviously, he's a pressure creator, but if he can get after Patrick Mahomes and even get him down a couple more times in this game, the Steelers get, maybe 3 or 4 sacks, things might look a little bit differently as opposed to just the 2 that they were able to get the first time. A lot of the success that Pittsburgh has had defensively comes when they're able to get after the quarterback, and when they were getting those 55 sacks in games and they were actually getting things done, that's when the Steelers' defense was really looking good, and this has been a very, off and on year for the Steelers. They have been excellent when it comes to pass rush. They're not great stopping the run, but whenever they were at least limiting what is, the dominating factor in the NFL these days, the passing offenses of the league, they had success. They were able to get some wins and get the job done and obviously find themselves in the playoffs. So, very interested in how that matchup goes, whether it ends up being the same result. Maybe it sways a little bit differently to one side or the other. I'm really curious to see how it goes. I'm excited to watch that go. If you know me, I love offensive line play. I love defensive line play. I love seeing the front 7 take on the O-lines. It's going to be an interesting matchup for sure. Second thing that I'm curious about, another thing to watch that I have in this game, is essentially just how the Steelers approach this game offensively as opposed to the first time that they played each other. I mentioned it earlier. It took the Steelers up until the final 3.5 minutes of the third quarter to get any points on the board, and it was a field goal. They must commit to the ground game going into this one here. And the reason I say that is because the Chiefs defense, not necessarily the greatest when it comes to getting things done. They were averaging about, 117.6 yards a game on the ground, 21st in the league. So the Chiefs run defense, not the greatest. But when you watch the way the Steelers played that first game, random drives where Najee Harris was getting yardage would they would forget he was there and then just commit to Ben Roethlisberger throwing the football. The one good drive that they had in the first half that ultimately ended in them in a missed field goal anyways, ended up coming to a screeching halt after 6 consecutive Ben Roethlisberger passes. Prior to those 6 passes, Najee Harris had 2 runs for 26 yards. He had a 21-yard run and a 5-yard run. I don't understand where in that play calling that your running back, who obviously just kind of gashed the defense right off the rip on that drive, you were like, yeah, just, let's just pass it now. The defense obviously was showing signs of weakness. And granted, the game was already I think 30 to, or maybe it wasn't 30. It was 23-0 at that point. I can't remember exactly when or what the score was at that point in the game. But your drive, which was going to be one of the more successful, at least to that point, ends up stopping because you just completely forgot about your running back. You brought Najee Harris in for one thing and one thing only, and that was to ease the pressure off of Ben Roethlisberger going into this year, or whoever ended up being the quarterback, because I don't know if they knew Ben Roethlisberger was the guy going into that point of the draft. But regardless, you drafted a running back in the first round to carry the load. He has proven that he is a bell cow back. He can do it on first down, second down, third down, fourth down if you need him to. There was a lot that I did not like about what the Steelers did offensively. Turnovers was another thing. Obviously, they got to protect the football here. I think they had 3, maybe it was 4 turnovers. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. But regardless, protect the rock and pound the rock. Don't be afraid to run the ball a little bit more. I understand the Chiefs' offense and how quickly they can score with, on a dime. If your defense is playing well, run the football. You drafted Najee Harris for a reason, and you're going up against a run defense that is not the worst in the league, but they are certainly not the best in the league either. They're somewhere around the middle of the pack there. Hand Najee the ball, and I'm sure a lot of Steelers fans would probably side with me on that one, and please let me know in the comment section where you guys feel or stand on that. How do you feel about that? Because they definitely need to run the football a little bit more. Smith-Schuster, like I mentioned, is going to be out there. It should take away from them stacking the box, even if it's just a few more plays less. Good opportunity. Casey's going to, they're going to have maybe an extra DB on the field for another 10 to 15 plays or so because of the fact that Smith-Schuster is going to be out there. Give Najee the ball. Now, for my last thing to watch, and I think this one will be a really crucial deciding factor here in how these teams fare going through the game, is going to be who dominates the third down the most. When you look at these two teams and kind of match up their numbers here, Pittsburgh is not really good when it comes to third down, and that's kind of putting it lightly. They averaged a third down conversion at 38.9% of their plays, which is tied for 18th in the league, and the number gets even worse because they were tied for first in the league in third down attempts. So they found themselves in third down situations more than anyone else, and on top of that, they only got it done about 38.9% of the time, which is a massive sample size. Whereas when you look at what Kansas City has done, and theirs honestly shows just how impressive this offense can be on third down, they only had 205 attempts on third down, which is one of the least amounts in the league, tied for 28th. They were getting it done at a league best 52.2% of the time. That means more times than not, they were getting it done on third down, and they had the smallest sample size in the league. So this is something that is not favoring the Steelers, and they need to do well in order to be successful against this Kansas City Chiefs team. And to double down on that, you have a Kansas City team that's, again, not the best, not the worst on third down. They're somewhere right in the middle at about 40% allowance. You have a good opportunity. The Steelers defense is one of the best in the league on third down. So, I mean, the numbers point to Pittsburgh doing well here as long as their offense can get the job done. All I'm saying is watch how third down plays out, because if the Steelers are either, whether it's 3 and outs or drives that are going for 9 plays ending in a failed third and long or something like that, or missed field goals because, they're passing 6 plays in a row and forgetting that Najee Harris is just kind of sitting around like, hello, give me the ball. Third down is going to be a big factor going into this one here, and I think we'll decide just how close the final score of this game ends up being. As for each team's biggest disadvantage going into this one, and one of my favorite points to kind of bring up for each and every team that I've done these playoff previews for has got to be, for the Steelers, their run defense. They're averaging a league high. This is worse than the league, 146.1 yards a game. Run defense, it's weird. It's very weird to me because they have one of the best pass rushing defenses, which means they can get after the quarterback, get it done, and bring them down. But then when it comes to stopping the run, it's like a completely different story. You have the best pass rush and the worst run defense. Somewhere along that line that happens. I don't really know where, and I definitely am going to kind of look into that more and see kind of how that happens. Maybe it's just and I heard somebody talking about this the other day. You become more undisciplined when you're blitzing the quarterback in your lanes because you're just trying to get after him, and maybe that when it comes times to play, run defense as opposed to just, trying to fire through gaps, that maybe your team just becomes a little less efficient at filling those holes as opposed to just trying to blow through them. Whatever it may be, I don't know, but they need to be able to stop the run. There is a benefit going into this game, and this brings me to my Chiefs' disadvantage here. It's their running game. So while they're not great at stopping the run in Pittsburgh, the Chiefs aren't necessarily the best at running the football as well, and it was also announced that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to miss this game as well. He is reported as out due to an injury. So with that, and I got something in my eye that kind of hurts. With that, it's winter in Kansas City. Chiefs need to be able to move the ball on the ground. They're not the best at running there, but they're not the worst. Again, it seems to pop up a lot for the Chiefs in certain situations. 115 yards a game on average is right in the middle of the league at 16th. If KC just commits to throwing the football all game long, I don't really know how this game's going to fare. It's interesting because, again, the Steelers are one of the best at getting after the quarterback, but they got torched playing Kansas City. They're going to have to clean some things up for sure and, maybe blitz a little bit less and force them to throw into coverage, because that seems to be what defenses were doing to really be successful against the Chiefs this year or in that early part of the year. Whatever that may be, they need to lock down on coverage, maybe just rush 4 or 5 at a time. I know the Steelers love to blitz, so it's probably not likely, but this will be interesting to see how things show, because you have a really bad run defense and an offense that doesn't really like to run the ball. They really like to pass the ball with all their weapons that they have out there, literal track stars running all over the field. It'll be interesting to see how those two teams play out. My biggest disadvantages in this game are not necessarily going to be massive disadvantages, but I think it'll be interesting to see how either of those two things actually affect this game, because when I was kind of looking at them and what I disliked the most, it was these two things, but realistically, they don't really lean into this just based off the matchup. The Chiefs throw the ball. Steelers, how often are they going to really have to be trying to stop the run? It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. As for the final score, my winner, over-under things, all that good stuff, for the over-unders, it's at 46. I don't know if I don't know where you could really end up with this one here. My final score will give you guys what I think is going to happen, but this is a very, this one could go either way. There have been a couple of games that have been like this so far that I've previewed where, if the Steelers are just completely falling behind and the Chiefs are just kind of lighting it up, I could see the under definitely hitting. Or maybe the Chiefs aren't, maybe this is a totally different game. Maybe both teams are flirting somewhere around 20 to 25 points for both, and it's a much closer game. I could see the over potentially being hit. And again, I don't give betting advice here. I just give my opinion. I don't know if I would bet on over-unders at all in this game, just because it feels very weird to me. There's there's a good possibility that you hit the under. There's a good possibility you hit the over. I don't really know what I would go with if I was to bet on that. For the actual odds, the spread here, Chiefs have to win by 12.5. They're minus 12.5 favorites here, while Pittsburgh is plus 12.5. I don't know if this game is going to be as, point differential here, as big of a gap as it was the last time these two teams played. I don't expect the Steelers to allow what happened to them the first time happen again going into this game. So I don't know if I like that minus 12.5. If the Steelers lose, I could see them losing by 8 or so. So I think they cover for the spread if they do end up losing. Them winning, I don't know, but I don't really think I like the Chiefs minus 12.5 in this one. I think I like the underdog. I like the Steelers plus 12.5 for this one here on the spread. And as for my final score and who I think is going to win in this week, I think it was 15 or 16, a rematch that they're having here. I'm going to go with the Chiefs. I have the Chiefs winning 28-17, and if you add up those two scores, that does put them at 45, so I do have them going for the under. Like I said, I don't expect this game to be as big of a blowout, but I ultimately think that the Steelers might struggle to keep up with the Chiefs and end up losing by like somewhere around 2 possessions, but not a full 2 possessions. It's going to be close. It'll be close. Like I think, what do I have? The Chiefs winning by 11 on this one here. So that's why I'm not 100% sold on the minus 12.5. And obviously, at the time of me recording this, that's where the numbers are. The line might change, and that would be a different story. If it gets closer to like, and I don't know how much it's potentially going to move, but if the Chiefs were like minus 11 favorites, I would like that a lot more. But that is my preview for the Steelers and Chiefs. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. I got one more game to preview for you guys, so keep your eyes out for that. Make sure you hit that sub button so you don't miss it. And again, check out my other previews as well if you're interested in seeing what I think about the other games. I will catch you guys in the next video. Happy Saturday, happy Super Wildcard weekend, and enjoy some football.